Hello guys, welcome to the next session of developing e-commerce application from scratch using Angular and Spring Boot. In the last session we discussed on how we can create one API which will return us all the order details. So this API will basically work for the admin only, so that admin can see all the orders which are placed by the different users. So we have created the API in the last session itself. Now in this session we are going to see how we can create a UI for the same and how we can show all these details on the UI. So over here, if I just go to the our application, so we have three different tabs as of now, like we have home, add new product, and we have show product details. After this we are going to add one more tab over here which will be saying, let's suppose order details or something like this, order information, something like this. And again in that tab we will show all the information. Again we will be showing those information in the table format itself. So we have different we have created different tables throughout the application. So if you want, you can just refer those tables and you can just try to create this table on your own, and you can just try to skip this session. Or else if you just want to see how we can create this table and how we can show the information, then only you can just watch this particular session. Now without taking much more time, let me just go to the VS Code and let's see how we can add one tab over here after these show product details. So if I just go to the VS Code over here, let me just go to the file, and the file in which I am interested is if I just go to the header component, and if I just go to the header.component.html, so over here we can just try to add some some new button. So let me just copy one button over here and let me just paste it as it is. And then what we have to do is we have to change the text. So let me just give the text as, let's suppose, order information, and this is applicable only for the admin. So I'm just going to keep the condition as it is. We have to change a path, but before changing the path we have to make sure that we have created one new component. So let's first of all quickly create one new component so that we can just configure a path as well. So let me just use one command, ng-gc, and let me just make it as order details, something like this. And let me just wait till the component is created. And let me just do one thing, component is created, so we have to configure a path as well. So let me just go to the app routing module ts file. Over here let me just do one thing, let me just copy this show product details, because this is basically configured for admin only, so we have similar requirements. That is the reason I'm just copying the show product details. So let me just change the path to the order information, something like this. Let me just change the component to the order detail component, something like this. And then we are just going to keep it as it is, like can activate, and alongside we are just going to keep the data as a admin only, something like this. Now let me just save these changes. Let me just copy the path and let me just come back to the header.component.html file. And then over here let me just paste this path, something like this. And now let me just save these changes and let me just open the terminal again, and let me just start my application. Let's see how it works. So let me just make it as npm run start. Let me just wait till my application starts. It might take a few seconds only. So now my application is started. So if I just go back to the Google Chrome and if I just refresh, then we are able to see one new tab, that is order information. If I just click on it, then we are able to see one message, that is order detail works. So we are able to see the default message given by the Angular component. The next thing that we have to do is we have to create one table over here, and then in that table we have to show the information that is going to be returned by our API. So how we can show this table? So again, for the table we are just going to use Angular material UI table. So we have the examples, like if I just go to the show product details, then we have the examples where we have used these Angular material table. Alongside, if you just don't want to follow these examples, you can just directly go to the official website of material Angular material. Over there we have the section that is called as a table. So in that table, in that section, you will be able to find a lot of different examples related to the tables. So whichever table you like, you can just try to use that particular table. So we have to use this basic table as of now. So what we have to do is, let me just do one thing. So I'm just going to use this mat basic table. So over here, the very first thing that we have to do is we have to just copy this entire code and we have to just paste it in our HTML. So let me just copy this code and let me just go to the order details dot component dot html and let me just paste it something like this. Now as of now we are getting some errors over here, so don't need to worry about it. We are just going to resolve those error in a moment. So over here, the very first error that we are getting is for the data source. So what is the data source exactly? So data source is nothing but like the data that we want to show in our table. So this is the error that we are going to we will just take it at the last. But before that, there is one more error at the bottom. So it is showing the error at the displayed columns. So what we have to do is we have to create one array of strings, and the name of that array should be the displayed columns, or else we can just give the different names as well. But that array should contain all the names of columns that we want to show in our table. So let's see how we can configure it. So if I just go back to the VS Code again, and let me just go to the TS file, and then over here we can just copy these displayed columns. If you just see, it is a array of strings. So let me just copy it and let me just come back to the VS Code again, and let me just go to the order details.component.ts file and let me just paste it something like this. Now over here we have to configure all the column names. So I'll just configure all the column names in a moment, but as of now I'm just going to keep it as it is. Now we are not be able to see any error at the bottom. The only error that we are able to see is at the very first line, which is called as a data source line. So we have to just resolve this error. So data source is nothing but like the data that we want to show in the table, and that data we are just going to get from our API. So first of all, we have to configure our service so that we can call our API, and once our API is called, then we will add the data source. But as of now, what we can just do is, if I just go back and if I just see like there is one data source that is configured. So similar way, what we can just do is we can just go to our TS file, and then we can just make it as a data source is equals to, and let me just make it as an empty array, something like this. And now we are not be able to see any errors over here. So next thing that we can just do is we can just go to our services, and we can just configure a API as well. So let me just show you what is the API that we have created. But before that, let me just go to the product.service.ts, and then let me just add one new function over here. So in the product.service.ts, let me just add one new function, and let me just give the name of that function as, let's suppose, get all order details for admin, something like this, and it will return my order details. So if I just open this my order details, then we are able to see different properties over here. So we can just keep it as it is, and then let me just go back to the file. So yes, so we have to change the API. So let me just show you the API that we have created. So if I just go to the IntelliJ, so this is the API that we have created, that is /get all order details. So let me copy it and let me just try to paste it over here, something like this, and let me just remove the additional slash. Yes, now it looking perfectly fine. Let me just save this service file. Let me just come back to my order details.component.ts file. In the constructor, we have to inject our product service. So let me just make it as product service, which is of type product service, something like this. Then we have to create one new function that is called as public. So let me just remove the public. We can just make it as get all order details for admin, something like this. And over here we have to just make this dot product service dot get all order details for admin, something like this. Then we have to make it as subscribe, and this subscribe basically takes two different callbacks. First one is for the response, so let me just make it as a response RESP, and then we can just make it as a console.log. So let me just use console.log, and then let me just make it as a RESP, something like this. And let me just add one more callback, so that if at all we get any error, then we can just call our error callback. So let me just make it as console.log, and let me just try to print error, something like this. Now our get all order details for admin function is ready. We can just copy this function and we can just try to call it from our ng-oninit. So let me just paste it, something like this. Now let me just save these changes, and let me just see what is the information that is printed on the console. So let me just see whether my application is compiled. Let me save these changes. So yes, it is compiled. Let me just go to the Google and let me just open my console, something like this. And now let me just do one thing. Let me click on order information. We are able to see 46 records, and we are able to see like different information over here. So this is the information that is printed on the console. Exactly this same information we are going to print on the table as well. So there are different columns that are involved. So first of all, if I just expand any one record, so we have order ID, then we have status, then we have full name, contact number, then we have address, then we have amount. So this is the information that we can just show, and obviously we have the product ID as well. So we can just show the product ID or product name also. So let's configure. So first of all, I just want to show order ID. So let me just copy this order ID. And one more thing that we have left back is we have to configure a columns as well. So let's do one thing. Let's first of all configure a columns, so that we will get an idea like what is the information that we are going to show. So very first column will be for ID, which is nothing but a order ID. The next column that we will just show is we will just show like product name. So we will just show like product name. The next column that we will just show is, let's suppose, full name, like a person's full name, or the name of the person who have placed the order. So name, then address, and then we have to add one more column. So we have to add a status as well, and lastly we have to add a contact number as well. So let me just add contact number, and lastly let me just add status, which is nothing but a order status. So in total we have 6 different columns. The next thing that we have to do is we have to come back to our HTML, and then we have to configure same columns over here. So let me just do one thing. Let me just first of all, let me just if you just see on line number 3, we have the column definition, mat column definition. So over here what we have to do is we have to give column names exactly the same which we have used over here. So very first column is ID. So let me just copy this ID and let me just paste it over here. Similarly, we can just change the title. As of now, let's keep it as it is, like element part, let's keep it as it is, or we can change it as well as of now itself. So as of now we are able to see the 46 records. So among these, if I just expand anyone, so we have the value that is order ID. So if you just see inside a JSON. So we have order ID, so let me just copy this order ID and let me just make it as element dot order ID, something like this. So element is nothing but, if I just give you some brief idea, so element is nothing but entire row. So this is the entire row, right? So this is the 0th index and this is the entire row. So we have like order ID, order full name. So in this 0th element we have every single detail. So this element will hold every single row, like it will hold entire row, it will hold entire 0th index, and from this entire row we just want to show the order ID. That is the reason I'm just using element dot order ID. And if you are just wondering about where the element is where the element is declared, so if you just see over here, it is clearly mentioned that mat cell definition is equals to let element. So over here element is basically declared. So we have to just make it as element dot order ID. The next column that we have is product name. So let me just copy the product name as a column name and let me just paste it as a name, and let me just make it as a product name column. Let me just paste as a title as well, and now let me just make it as element dot. So let me just find out the correct combination. So we have to use element dot product, something like this. So if you just see the JSON, then we have to make element dot product dot, we have to use a product name. So let me just copy this let me just copy this key and let me just paste it, something like this. So we have to use element dot product dot product name. Then the third column that we have is name. So it is nothing but a person name or user's name who have placed the order. So let me just put it as a cell definition, column definition, and let me just change a title as well. And let me just go back to the JSON, and then what we have to do, we have to use element dot user. So we have to use element dot user dot. So we have like first name and last name. As of now, let's make it as a first name only. So we can just use element dot user first name, something like this. Then next column that we have is address. So let me just copy the column and let me just paste it over here. Let me just paste it over here also and over here also. So how we can access the address? So we have to just use element dot order full order. So this is the key that we have used. So order full order. So let me just copy it and let me just paste it over here. So it will be something like element dot order full order. And we have to copy it like one more time because we have still few columns left back. So after the address we have contact number. So let me just copy, make sure you are copying the dot as well, and let me just paste it inside column definition, inside a title. And how we can access the contact number, we have to just use element dot order contact number, something like this. So let me just copy it and let me just paste it over here. And we have to copy it one more time because we have one more column left back. So if I just go to the TS, then we have status. So let me just paste it as a column definition. Then let me just paste it as a title. And how we can access this status, then we have to use element dot order status. So let me just copy the order status and let me just paste it over here, something like this. And now let me just remove some space. Okay, so now let me just paste it something like this, and also let me just paste the contact number in the comment also, something like this. And now let me just save these changes. So over here we are not able to get any error and everything seems perfectly fine. The next thing that we have to do is we have to like show this data that we are seeing on the console. We have to show this data inside our table. So how we can do this? If I just go to the order detail.component.ts, then first of all let me just do one thing. Let me just, we have like used a data source. Initially it is empty array, But as soon as we get any response, what we have to do is we have to just use this dot data source is equals to response, something like this. And now let me just save these changes. Let's see what happens. So now we are able to see all the details on the table. Now if you just see, the table is not looking quite good because it is like not taking expected space. So we have to apply some styles as well. So if I just go back to the Angular material side inside a CSS, then we have to apply a width to a table. So what we have to just do is we have to just go to the order details component dot CSS file, and then we have to paste this style. So it is nothing but like table, and style is nothing but like width is equals to 100%, something like this. And now if I just show you, then yes, it is looking perfectly fine. The one thing that we can just do is if you just want, you can just keep it as it is, or else you can just keep some space from the left hand side and right hand side as well. Alongside you can just give some margin from the top side as well. So how we can just do is, if I just go to the HTML, then we can just do one thing. We can just create one division, and we can just apply one class that is called as a container, and let me just enclose my entire table inside this division, something like this. Now yes, it is keeping some space from left hand side and right hand side. And alongside, if you just want to apply some margin, then we have to just use empty-5, which is nothing but a margin top 5. And yes, now it is looking perfectly fine. So we are able to see all the details over here, and we are able to like see all the, like there are 46 order placed. So that is the reason we are able to see the huge list over here. As of now, like we haven't used any kind of dates and everything in our databases. But if you have the dates, like order placed date and expected delivery date, everything, you can just show it over here. So as of now we don't have those information. That is the reason we are not showing it over here. So I hope you got an idea around like how we can show these information to the admin, like show all the order details to the admin. In the upcoming sessions, what we are going to do is we are just going to add one button over here, so that we can just change the status of this any specific order. Alongside, we are just going to add some filters as well. So if admin wants to search for specific criteria, or if admin just want to apply some filters, then we can just then admin will be able to apply those filters. So in the upcoming sessions, we are going to add those filters and everything on top of it. So I hope you got this idea. If you still have any questions, let me know into a comment section, and I will try my best to help you out in that case. And I hope you enjoyed this session, and I'll see you in the next session.